Hi, kids. As we get a little bit further into our study of Chicago in the 1920s, we're going to talk about a an event that happened that by itself is probably not all that important, but is still remembered in certain parts of Chicago, certain aspects of America. It's remembered, and that is something called the Black Sox Scandal of 1919 to 1921. Um, which about a little over 100 years ago now, the Chicago White Sox played in the World Series in 1919 against the Cincinnati Reds. And why that became so famous was that the White Sox threw the World Series. And when I say they threw it, that means they lost it on purpose. They accepted money from gamblers in order to bet on themselves losing, and then they hopefully were going to make money off of losing the World Series. I guess they did make some money, but we'll see what ended up happening to them that didn't work out quite so well. And it's not that what was going on in baseball is really all that important in the grand scheme of things, but what is important about it is it just shows you this culture of corruption that existed in the city of Chicago at the time. And these guys that were involved, they lived in Chicago too. They saw all the bribery that was going on all over the place, like what we read about in the Ain't Misbehaving packet. They saw people getting away with just doing blatantly illegal stuff, but they were paying the right people to do it, so it happened. And so they thought they could get away with it, and a lot of people, we don't exactly know a lot of these stories because people don't always talk, but there's evidence to suggest that guys threw games all the time back in those days, and it's something that became famous in baseball history and is still famous even today. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so Chicago, say it ain't so. The Black Sox Scandal, 1919 to 1921. Here's a picture of Comiskey Park, which is these days it's a parking lot right outside Guaranteed Rate Field where the White Sox still play. So if you go down to the White Sox game, you very likely will park your car right where this ballpark once existed. Okay, so the capital of baseball. In the early 20th century, baseball was by far the most popular sport in America, and Chicago was the biggest baseball city. Both the Cubs and the White Sox were regularly contenders for the World Series in those years. The Cubs of the National League appeared in the World Series in 1906, 1907, 1908, 1910, and 1918, winning it in 1907 and 1908. The White Sox of the American League appeared in the World Series in 1906, 1917, and 1919, winning in 1906 and 1917. What about 1919? In 1919, the White Sox were considered far and away the best team in baseball. They just won the World Series over the Giants 2 years earlier in 1917. 1918 was a bit of a weird season since so many players were off fighting in World War I, and the season came to an end a month earlier than usual. The 1919 White Sox picked up right where they had left off in 1917, winning regularly. In those days, there were only 8 teams in each league, so there were no playoffs like there are today. If your team came in first place in the regular season, they went to the World Series to play against the first place team from the other league. Teams that came in second stayed home. There were no wild cards. The 1919 White Sox were so good, they already were pretty sure they would play in the World Series by the end of August with a month to go in the regular season. They also were a team that was not happy. The 1919 White Sox had 2 groups of guys. The first group was made of college-educated players. The second group was a tougher bunch, with very little education and lower salaries than many of the college guys. They played together on the field, but had nothing to do with each other in the locker room or socially. The roughneck group resented the higher salaries that the college guys usually got. They resented the owner of the team, Charlie Comiskey, who, like many baseball owners, was very cheap and even charged them to launder their uniforms. In fact, many of the White Sox refused to pay to get their uniforms washed, so they just played day after day in ever filthier uniforms. Comiskey began to get embarrassed by the way his team looked and probably smelled if he got close enough to them, so he eventually paid to get them washed. And there you see a photo of the 1919 World Series. Basically, the guys who are going to throw the World Series are mostly sitting over on this side, and then you've got the other group of guys who didn't get along with them over here on the left side. So, you're not going to find, as it says in the caption, not going to find too many photos of these guys hanging out together, other than team photos that they had to take because they were required to. But even there, you can see that they're sitting together in their groups. The fix is in. One of the Roughnecks, a first baseman named Chick Gandil, had connections in Chicago and New York's illegal gambling circles. He began suggesting to gamblers that he could convince a lot of the Sox to throw, or lose on purpose, the upcoming World Series if the gamblers could round up $100,000 for them. At the time, games were thrown quite a bit, and very little usually happened to the guys who did it. First, it was very hard to prove they were throwing games because honest mistakes looked just like ones made on purpose. Second, the owners of baseball teams did not want the regular public to know it was happening, so they kept it quiet. Nobody had ever thrown a World Series before, though. Several New York gamblers were interested. If they knew the White Sox were going to lose, they could find lots of people to bet with because almost nobody was expecting the National League's Cincinnati Reds to win. They could bet lots of money on the Reds and make a fortune when the Sox lost. Gandil got 6 other White Sox to go in on his plan. Pitchers Eddie Seacott and Lefty Williams were the most important because pitchers control the game more than anyone else. He got infielders Swede Risberg and Fred McMullen to join, and outfielders Hap Felsch and Shoeless Joe Jackson, the Sox best hitter. He also asked third baseman Buck Weaver to join, but Weaver did not like the idea and refused to participate. And there you see a newspaper article showing the 8 guys who were involved. There's Buck Weaver, who didn't want to go along with it, but he did know about it. The Sox took the field in Cincinnati and quickly lost 2 games. Catcher Ray Schock, one of the clean Sox, knew something was wrong when the pitchers kept ignoring his signs for pitches and throwing the ball right over the plate so it could be easily hit. Schock, who had a nasty temper, even attacked Lefty Williams in the dugout after Game 2. White Sox pitcher Dickie Kerr, a rookie whom the Roughnecks never talked to, won Game 3 back in Chicago. Seacott and Williams lost again in Games 4 and 5, putting the Reds 1 win away from the World Championship. Kerr won again in Game 6, then it was back to Seacott. The Roughnecks by now were really upset with the gamblers. They had only been paid a little part of the $100,000 they were promised, and Seacott got most of it, $10,000, because he, being pretty smart, refused to participate unless he got his money before he pitched. Williams, Felsch, and Jackson got $5,000, and later most of the other Roughnecks got paid, all except Weaver, who knew what was going on but decided he would play as hard as he could and did not take any money. Those amounts were a lot less than they originally agreed to and were not much better than the bonus they would have gotten from the White Sox if they had just played to win from the start. By now, White Sox manager Kid Gleason knew that his players were throwing the series. He did not know that many of the Roughnecks had changed their minds and decided to play to win. Seacott was able to talk his way into starting another game, and this time pitched wonderfully in a White Sox win. The Sox were down 4-3, and Lefty Williams wanted a shot to redeem himself too. The night before Williams was to pitch, a man connected to the gamblers visited him in his home in Chicago. He told Williams the Sox were going to lose the next day. Williams told him that he wanted to win. The gambler told him that if that happened, Williams' wife would not be alive the next day. The next day, Williams took the mound, certain that if he pitched well like his teammates expected, his wife would be killed. He gave up 4 runs in the first inning, and the White Sox never caught up, losing 10-5 and giving the Reds their first World Series title. Rumors about the series fix circulated even before it started. It stayed a secret for almost a year, though. A year later, Chicago police began investigating rumors of a thrown game between the Cubs and Phillies in 1920. They found no evidence of that game being thrown, but it did open up questions about the last year's World Series again. A few days before the end of the 1920 season, Eddie Seacott and Joe Jackson were called in to testify about 1919. They confessed to their part in throwing the games and accepting money from gamblers, and all 8 Roughnecks were suspended from the White Sox and were nicknamed the Black Sox by the Chicago newspapers. After Shoeless Joe Jackson confessed in a Chicago courtroom, a child was reputed to have implored Jackson to say it ain't so. The Sox lost 2 of their last 3 games and lost their chance to go back to the World Series in 1920, which was won by the Cleveland Indians. Instead, 8 band players went on trial for fraud in Chicago. The players stayed silent, the gamblers lied about their knowledge, and Seacott and Jackson's confessions disappeared from the evidence room. Then, the 8 players were found not guilty by the jury. They would not go to jail, but they would not play baseball anymore either. Baseball Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis banned all 8 for life, including Buck Weaver, because he knew about the fix and did not tell anyone. Jackson and Weaver protested that they played as well as they could and applied to be reinstated repeatedly, but were always denied. They remain banned to this day, and Shoeless Joe Jackson, who has the 3rd highest lifetime batting average in history, is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame because of the ban. And there you see a picture of Shoeless Joe on the left and Buck Weaver on the right. Whenever you see me do these videos, I kind of got the same background over my shoulder here, just to take a look at what we see. This photo right here is of manager Kid Gleason, the manager of the White Sox, and Eddie Collins, who was one of the clean White Sox that did not participate in the fix. And that picture was taken in September of 1920, so literally only a few days before the entire scandal kind of blew up and everybody suddenly knew about it. It took almost a year, but right about the time that those guys were taking that picture at the Polo Grounds in New York was about the time that the secret was becoming known. So that's one reason that I have it up. Gotta honor the guys who didn't take the money, and but at the same time, it's an important part of baseball history. And like I said before, it talks about the culture of corruption that existed in Chicago at the time.